all your volunteers. Thank you, First Baptist Church. I appreciate it. I want to just recognize a few folks who are here with us this evening who we don't get a chance very often to recognize these people publicly. So for folks who are current members of our coordinating council or the CBF Heartland Endowment Board, would you please stand for just a moment so we can recognize you and see who you are? Thank you for your service to the organization. These are the folks who make sure that we continue to run well throughout the year, who really care for the organization, give it leadership throughout the year, and we could not do what we do without them. There are a couple of people who are here with us who I hate to calculate the number of hours that they have spent in our office, opening mail, licking stamps. Do people lick stamps anymore? Taking the stamps off and putting them on, licking envelopes, folding letters. Dolores and Emma Foreman are sitting right over here. Would you all wave for us? These sisters have been incredible volunteers for our organization for a really long time, and so we're very thankful that you're here with us this evening. And probably the most important person in our organization is our office manager, Ellen Gregory. Ellen, would you raise your hand? What's truly incredible about Ellen, she's our office manager, and we don't even have an office. And she is able to help us continue to run really well. So thank you, Ellen. Before we kind of get started this evening, I want to introduce to you David Folk, who is going to serve as our MC, and he's going to come in a moment to kind of run the roast portion of the evening. We've never done a roast before. We may never do this ever again. I think this could be really fun. It could be really cringeworthy, as my son would say, but we're looking forward to that. David, your title is Director of Philanthropic Giving at KCUR, which is public radio in Kansas City. Is that right? David's going to do a wonderful job emceeing tonight, and so he'll come in just a few minutes and guide us through that time. I want to make a special presentation before he comes, and it involves a grant that we give every year. Since 2010, CBF Heartland has offered a Giving Circle grant to a ministry or mission endeavor that's making a difference in its community. 3 things make this grant unique. First is the source of its funding, because there's not a big foundation that funds this grant. This grant is made up of gifts from the members of the Giving Circle who fund it $52 at a time. The second thing that makes this grant unique is the way the recipient of the grant is chosen, because everyone who gives to this Giving Circle gets to vote on who receives the grant. The third thing that makes this grant unique is its name. Last year, in a moment of imaginative glossolalia, CBF Heartland changed the name of this from the completely obvious Giving Circle grant to the Caboodle grant. A caboodle, just in case you don't know, is a group or collection of things. And in this case, it's a group of very generous people who have come together to try to make a positive difference in the life of a ministry. Nearly 70 people joined Caboodle this year, and collectively those people are offering a $3,500 grant. Caboodlers chose between 4 grant finalists this year that included a fair trade store, a ministry with immigrants, a Honduran village partnership, and a medical and dental clinic for the working poor. All of those finalists were incredibly worthy of receiving the grant, but ultimately it was the Caboodlers themselves that decided who was going to receive this year's grant. And so now it's my great honor to introduce the winner of this year's 2016 Caboodle Grant for $3,500 to the Good Samaritan Care Clinic in Mountain View, Missouri. Dr. John Roberts is here to accept the grant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just a couple words. Thank you very much. And 1998 was a year that changed my life. Of course, we have life changes every year. But I was invited by CBF Missouri to make a mission trip to China to evaluate health care, and that would have been my first mission trip. Well, with the encouragement of Charles Cantrell and Harold Phillips, they talked me into making the trip. The 10 reasons that I could not go to China, they overrode those, and with their encouragement, I went on my first mission trip. Fast forward 20 years, 2016, in 2 weeks, I'll be going on my 25th medical mission trip. This one is back to Haiti. We'll be taking a medical team. In February, we took a medical team. We saw 700 patients a day while we were there, and we paid for 32 people to have surgery. And this all came out of a little town called Mountain View. Following my third trip to China with CBF, I came back to the office and a patient said, "Why do you go to all these other countries when there are people hurting in southern Missouri? Why don't you take care of them?" Well, that planted the seed that eventually would become Good Samaritan Care Clinic. And in 2004, we opened the doors of the Good Samaritan Clinic, and in 2007, we added a dental clinic to it. Fast forward, now we're 2016, and in May, the Good Samaritan Care Medical and Dental Clinic celebrated seeing our 25,000th patient. For many people in southern Missouri, the Good Samaritan Care Clinic is the clinic of last resort, dental and medical. In 2015, the dental clinic was needing to go through an expansion. We just barely had enough money to stay in operation. We see 35 to 50 patients every Monday night with our 125 volunteers. And we had a carpenter who is probably the best finishing carpenter as well as the most expensive carpenter in the Mountain View area that said, "I just retired and I will do all the building for the renovation." And we go, wow, can't beat that. Now we got to figure out how to come up with the money. This is scary, let me tell you. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Harold Phillips, and he says, "We have $6,000 that we would like to give you if you have a special need in your dental clinic." So with Ken Horgan and that, we now, and you will see pictures of that postcard in front of you. The reason the postcard is in front of you is because we have a difficult time getting dentists. We get medical physicians, mid-levels, physician's assistants, nurses, but it's difficult to get dentists. So I'm asking a favor for all of you. I think it's safe to say that sometime we all see a dentist. And I would like for you to take this card and give it to your dentist and ask them that maybe they would consider donating one day out of the next year to come visit us at Mountain View at the Good Samaritan Clinic. This donation this evening will be used to buy dental supplies. So if it hadn't been CBF, I don't think I would have probably ever gone on a mission trip, now 25. If it hadn't been for CBF, the gentleman wouldn't have come and said, "Why are you going other places?" And Good Samaritan Care Clinic would probably not have started. If it hadn't been for CBF, we probably wouldn't have done the addition to the dental clinic. So from the board, the staff, all the volunteer, and the patients that we serve, we say thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Oh, come on. There you go. You ready, Harold? Okay, welcome to the roast of Harold Phillips, and I hope many of you... That's the nicest thing that's going to be said about Harold all night. So, many of you will remember the infamous and often naughty celebrity roast hosted by Dean Martin from 1974 to 1984. Okay, we want you to think like that if you remember it. Now, we don't have a dais of celebrities up here in front of you, but we do have 40 minutes of friendly and funny insults for our man of the hour, who I now want to invite up here to sit in the chair. So, come on, Harold. So no one misses the expressions on the face. But I just want, can you imagine?
I feel like a preacher, one of these contemporary kind of preachers. If I just had on my jeans, I'd be all right.
Can somebody get him a guitar? Okay. But can you imagine 40 uninterrupted minutes to roast Harold Phillips? I don't think there's anybody in the room more deserving or has more material that could be used on them than our friend Harold. And this is why I've been looking forward to this tonight more than the presidential debate this week. Well, I mean, honestly, who was looking forward to this week's debate? Well, Harold was, because you know, he loves politics. Is that news to you all? He loves presidential politics, too. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go down that road very far. We might venture a little ways. But our speakers are listed in your program tonight, and I want you to know that I did not write those bios. Those very unflattering bios were written by Harold. I think it was his attempt to roast the roasters in advance. So our roasters have 3 minutes each to do their thing, and one of my jobs tonight is to make sure they do it. So the first one that we're going to hear from tonight could not be here. And gosh, was she upset. But she's going to set the tone for what's going to happen. This is Cynthia Holmes from St. Louis, one of our early moderators.
Good evening. I'm so sorry I can't be with you as we celebrate the leadership of Harold Phillips. But it may be appropriate that I am traveling because led us Harold has. He has led CBFers to Slovakia, England, Rushlakan, Ireland, China, Washington, D.C., Haiti, Homestead, Wales, Tilbury, and that exotic locale, Springfield, Missouri. I was fortunate enough to go on one of those trips, the one to Homestead, where we were roofing and helping build a medical clinic. It was a wonderful trip. It got people outside their normal comfort zone. They were doing work that was unusual for them, and they were engaged in the work. Meanwhile, during that, Harold did what he does best: stand around and chat somebody up without doing any work. But one of the gentlemen and I hatched a devious plot. The other fellow, who Harold has described as a Rush Republican, and me, who Harold has described as a feminist Democrat, got up on the roof, and we started having a lively discussion about guns and abortion. That brought Harold to the roof, assuming that he would be the peacemaker. But when Harold got up there, we put him to work, thus getting Harold outside of his normal comfort zone. Those trips accomplished a lot. a medical clinic in Homestead, Florida, a children's center in Kenya, and Harold was very proud of that Kenya Children's Center, even though he did suffer the defeat of not finding President Obama's real birthplace. But Harold, buddy, that does not give you the excuse for a mission trip to Hawaii next year. Harold, friend, you have been just the leader we need to take us where we needed to go. And Gwen has been the perfect person by your side while you did so. So, friends, Harold and Gwen, we wish you God's blessings as you embark on your next journey. Thank you. Good night. Have a great evening.
Now, what Cynthia didn't say, or the term that she didn't use for the fact that Harold was doing nothing, was the term denominational hack. Because Harold loves using that term. He used to call me that when I worked at William Jewell. But I don't think he ever realized that once he became CBF coordinator, that he himself was a denominational hack. But I think our son Davis said it best when he was really little and used to imitate things that Uncle Harold would say. He would call Uncle Harold a nominal hack. Either way, he got it right. It's right. So, okay, so one of the things you get to endure is I get to do my a couple little things in the middle of these. So some of these things are not going to be said, but here are some lists. No. This is a list of things that you need to know about Harold. Politics, Robert Altman films, the Sugar Creek Slavic Festival, accordion music, which we've heard, 40-year member recognition at Second Liberty, the Vanderbilt Commodores. You're not wearing your tie. They must not have won last night. That's when he wears the tie, they've won. So, making sausage balls, Missouri historic tax credits, being a youth friend to many at-risk elementary boys in Liberty, the Scott Joplin Festival, playing How Great Thou Art on the piano in ragtime style, priceless. His admiration for Gene Carnahan. Okay. Never meeting a stranger while traveling the state of Missouri in an Enterprise rent-a-car. More miles on Southwest and Delta that he'll never, ever have to buy a plane ticket for the rest of his life. The annual viewing of It's a Wonderful Life. His mom's cooking. Well, that's enough for now. Okay, so we have 3 roasters who are coming, and all have varied associations with Harold through CBF. So I told you I'd call you up before I said what I just said, and I didn't do it. So Jeannie McGowan and Shane McNary, come on up here. Look in your program to see what unkind things have been said about them. And then when they are done, we're going to see a video from our 3rd roaster from Harold's best friend in Romania. Okay, Shane, you're up first.
What's your attitude? As a CBF field personnel, that's what Harold tells me every time that we end up speaking. Shane, what's your attitude? Whether I'm sharing with him my joy of all the changes that are going on in our organization, hello, boss, or how he needs to help us out a little bit more, it's always what's your attitude. Well, Harold, I have watched my attitude. And I have looked, based on our relationship together, I know what a Bible man you are. Though I've never seen you with the Bible. Though I've never heard you quote Scripture at all, inerrant or otherwise, I am sure you are a Bible man. So looking at Scripture to find some pictures of Harold Phillips that can remind us. Harold has been on mission trips to Slovakia, too many to count, and there's always one more. Always one more. Harold is like the persistent widow. He is convinced that because of his gifts to the offering for global missions, for which I'm thankful, He can call me anytime he wants to. I'm laying in bed at 12:30 praying, and Harold, my phone vibrates, and it's Harold. You got a minute? You don't turn Harold down. Yes, I've got a minute. So I answer your calls because you're persistent, and for that I'm thankful. You're like the little baby Jesus, Harold. When Joseph and Mary are trying to get out of town, and they look around, and little baby Jesus is missing, that's Harold. Based on our experience with Harold, we do not let any team come away from the airport or go back to the airport on their own. We see you from gate to gate because one person we let go on their own, and guess who missed their international flight back to the United States? That Jason Diltz still speaks to you is a sign of God's mercy. Harold, most of all, the biblical picture that I have of you is Proverbs 31. Because while you have the perfect wife, you're sitting around at the city gates doing absolutely nothing. Mission teams come thousands of miles to work, and I have these great folks from Missouri saying, have you seen Harold? He's gone to see the mayor. He's gone to meet with some boys from Vajets and sit and talk with them for hours on end. We have no idea where you are, Harold. But I'm glad you're there. God bless.
Well, Harold, Keith and I have had a lot of good experiences with Harold. We've done several mission trips. I think the first one was to Tilbury when we were checking on a partnership there with this poor dock community with this storefront church. It was a great experience, and I think the most interesting thing about that one was the visit we made to this clandestine place out in the middle of nowhere that we really couldn't figure out why we were there. And I still get mail from that place. And I'm not sure that someday it's not going to put me on some no-fly list or something because it was very strange. But also a wonderful trip to the Baptist World Alliance in Birmingham, and we got to go to England, Ireland, and Wales together, and it was just great. But those things fall under what we would call BA. And what I want to talk about tonight is AA. The BA would be before the accordion. AA is after. We were never privileged to be on a trip where Harold took his accordion. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Harold and accordion players. And I know this is supposed to be kind of short, David, but okay. Well, Harold, I found out that when you were little, you told your mom, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to be an accordion player." And his mom responded, "Well, Harold, you know you can't do both." I've got a few questions that I don't know that you'll know the answers to these about accordions. Did you know if you drop an accordion and a set of bagpipes and a viola off of a 20-story building, do you know which one lands first? Nobody cares. Now here's another one. What's the difference between an onion and an accordion? Nobody cries when you chop up the accordion. Harold recently learned what happens when you leave your accordion in your unlocked car. When you get back, there's 3 more of them there. You may not all have heard about this, but there were a group of terrorists that hijacked a plane full of accordion players. Now, can you imagine that? They called ground control with a list of demands, And then they told the negotiator if their demands aren't met, they will release one accordion player per hour. Which reminds me, you know the difference between a terrorist and an accordion player? Terrorists have sympathizers. And someone once said, "What's a gentleman? Someone who knows how to play the accordion but doesn't." And finally, what's the range of an accordion? 20 yards if you've got a good arm. And if you don't believe me, just ask Gwen.
Good evening, everybody. This is Denis Blidariu from Bacău, Romania. I've met Harold. Harold, how you doing? As part of his sabbatical year in 2008, his sabbatical experience, which would mean being a stranger in a strange world, in a strange land. H, you are no more a stranger in Romania. Through Harold, I've met a lot of nice people from CBF. Some of you are there in that room. Sorry guys, I'm not there with you. Shane, Diane, Gwen, Amy, Becky, Bill, and probably some other people. I hope you have a great time. I miss you all, and I hope to see you soon. I'm here to tell you about this funny story that happened last year, this time in Istanbul, Turkey, where me, Harold, and Mike, and our friend went there. And you know, when you go to Istanbul, you have to see all kind of touristical places. One of them is the Grand Bazaar. And we get there, and I'm trying to buy some bookmarks for myself and for some friends back home. And as H is watching me, he's saying, "Oh, you don't really know how to negotiate. So let me teach you how to do it. Just watch and learn, all right, as we are here." So I don't really remember how we get into this carpet shop, but we get inside there and we see a carpet after carpet after carpet, and H is like, "Calm down, I got this." But at some point he's sweating. He's like, he really understands that we cannot go out of there without buying carpets. The guy was really good at doing it, and he's at some point asking H, "Make me an offer." And H makes this crazy low offer, from which the guy responds, "Add just a little bit more, just a little bit more." And that's what he did, and that's how we ended up spending a ridiculous amount of money on some carpets. But all in all, H, since I met you, I've learned a lot of new things. I've learned not just new things, but all things. I'm being more aware about them. You introduced me to the Roof project in Bucharest, to the Vajets community, and I'm really thank you for that. Thank you very much. And I also hope you have a great night. Be your best tonight. Take care. Good evening, everybody.
Okay. Well, I finally got the ridiculous amount out of Harold. Do you know this, Gwen? $800. And do you want to see the rug? Let me hold it like this to make it look bigger. Okay. Who's ever been on the coordinating council? Would you raise your hand? You all put this man in charge of the budget? Oh my goodness. Oh, Harold. It looks really good in their house, though. on the landing. Oh, it looks really good. But in all fairness, there were 2 other little rugs that went with it. But okay, so Christy and Gary, I need you all to come up and get ready. Now, we're halfway through our roasters, but it's probably a good time to reflect on Harold's fascination with white buildings. White buildings, 2 in particular, the White House and the White Castle. Harold has been to both. He was included in the 1994 National Prayer Breakfast. Now, some thought this was payback for helping get his fellow native Tennessean, Al Gore, elected vice president 2 years before that, but that has been debunked. I thought that would get a bigger laugh. That has been debunked. He was really invited as the moderator of CBF Missouri and for being the right kind of Baptist. So Harold has been to the White House. And then there's the White Castle, which he has visited many more times than the White House. How many of you have had a White Castle with Harold? Okay, a few of you, and I'll bet you every one of you, he ate more than you did. And I'm hoping that a long car ride afterward did not happen for you. Okay. White Castles are to Harold what rhubarb pie is to Garrison Keillor. Wouldn't this be a good time for some White Castles? So right here, Harold, we got White Castles for you. Just put them over there on the table for me. They will. I only got 30 for you. So you may need to share some. So yeah, okay. So just remember, those were in our car for a little while. And yeah, I'm already in trouble for that. There's one. Dub got one. And there's mustard to go with it. So, okay. Well, wouldn't this be a good time for some more roasters? Here's Christy Edwards of Liberty and Gary Dollar of St. Louis.
I met Harold at Second Baptist Church 7.5 years ago. I got to know Harold in a small group as we met every Tuesday around my table for tacos, laughs, and deep conversation for 3 years. One thing about Harold is that he is very smart. My guess is it takes the average person about 7 minutes, 16 seconds talking with Harold to realize, my goodness, this guy is brilliant. Does that sound about right, time-wise? But being the incredibly helpful and servant-hearted man that he isn't going to make any man, woman, or child wait that long to know they are in the presence of greatness. Instead, he's going to wait about 26 seconds into the conversation, and he's going to help you out. It's just the kind of guy he is. This is obviously hypothetical and has never happened to me personally, but it might go something like this. Wow, Harold, you know a lot about gardening, or insert any random subject. Well, Christy, I know all of this because I went to Vanderbilt. Now, I admit it. Harold's smart, and he has the fancy pants degree to prove it. But the smarts that make him Ivy League material to me, and Vanderbilt isn't actually an Ivy League school, but don't tell Harold, you guys. We don't want to crush his sensitive spirit. The smarts that I admire about Harold are his people smarts. He has a way about him that puts people at ease, encourages them, inspires them, and makes them feel loved. One of my favorite things to witness is Harold interacting with my children, specifically my oldest son, Jackson. Jackson has some challenges that make social interactions a little bit more difficult for him than for other people. But that has never deterred Harold from seeking Jackson out to talk about cars, possums, Jesse James, and Michael Jackson, including a moonwalk. And I imagine that Harold's thrown in Vanderbilt here and there when he's been out of my earshot. Harold's someone who lives a daily life of noticing, respecting, and caring for those who are or could be marginalized, both across the pond and in his own neighborhood. No amount of education can create this kind of tender heart. And this is why I know that when I'm with Harold, I really am in the presence of greatness.
Now for a different word, Harold.
Warm, kind, friendly, considerate, servant. Harold Phillips projects these sham characteristics and hide behind them to cover up his megalomaniac obsession with power and his relentless drive to take control of CBF. Like me, you may have been duped by this master Machiavellian into believing who Harold Phillips is, but I know the truth. While at Southern Seminary, Deer Park Baptist Church was an important part of my and Gail's life, I was actually ordained there, not that he would remember that, and Gail was heavily involved in church life. It was there that we met and built a close relationship with our caring and loving Minister of Education, Harold Phillips. Little did we know we were just numbers in his drive to create the largest young marrieds class in Louisville, so he could use it as a stepping stone to a bigger position. I did not discover that until just a few years ago, when after many years of not being connected, I ran into Harold at a CBF meeting. I enthusiastically ran up to Harold and gave him our history, and I told him I was pastoring a small church. He looked at me and said, "Small church? I don't remember you, your wife, and I don't have time to deal with the past." All that changed when I said, "A small church in Illinois," and it was good to see him again, and to tell Gwen hello for Gail and me. He immediately said, "Illinois?" and got an enthusiastic, somewhat wild look on his face. I heard him mutter, "Illinois again?" and the word Heartland. As though talking to the air instead of me, said, "I can take Illinois, call it Heartland, and that will be my launching pad. Only 48 more to go." At that time, I did not understand, but he looked at me and said, "You, my dear friend, are the beginning, my trump card. This will be huge." And then he looked off and said, "Phillips Tower." For the next few months, you would have thought I was his best friend. Countless phone calls and even invited to Liberty. During one visit, I noted how little technology there was in the office, and Jeff said that Harold keeps a private server at home to take care of his part of the work. I asked him about Susie Painter being named the CBF CEO, and he said something about the process being rigged against him. That everyone knows he is Mr. CBF, and he would keep everyone in suspense and let us know later if he would, and I quote, "accept the outcome for a while until he had it all consolidated under his control." He then asked me if I knew anyone in Iowa. Let me just say that once Illinois was in his pocket, he once again did not know me. I talked about Gail and I coming over to Liberty at one of our meetings. I said, "Gail and I'd love to come over to Liberty and visit with you and Gwen." And his one-word comment was, "Why?" I could go on and give many more examples of this sham, but you get the idea. But seriously, I fear for my life for having shared this with you tonight. No. Really seriously, we know that Harold is in fact, and Harold you are, warm, kind, friendly, considerate, and has been a faithful servant to all of us who take pride in being Baptist, to CBF, and to the best of what it means to be Baptist in this world. It is a fact that we both did not quite remember each other from Deer Park, but it's also a fact that to reconnect with Harold Phillips has been one of the gifts that God has given me in my life. Harold, thank you for your service. Thank you for being you. And I went to Romania with him, and he does nothing. It's true. And he would get lost. He lost me. But anyway, he's a man who really has put service above achieving personal power and position. And you could have done that so easily as you pursued your ministry. Thank you for not doing that. Thank you for being you. You have blessed us all.
Gary, I think you're onto something there because, Harold's quest for power is very well known in Liberty as a career city councilman. He knows that incumbents always win, so he doesn't have to do anything to get reelected. So it comes naturally. But I'm beginning to think that this meeting tonight here in Jefferson City was no accident, because I had report this morning that Harold's rent-a-car was seen parked at the Capitol, and that he was walking back from the governor's mansion, putting a tape measure in his pocket and a big smile on his face. So no telling what he's got planned next. No telling. Charles and Tyler, come on up here. Gosh, that was, both of you, that was great. I mean, let's just take a breath for a second, because, okay. Now, we have planned next our two final roasters. Are you happy? Charles Cantrell from Mountain View and Tyler Tankersley from Cape Girardeau, Liberty, and Cape Girardeau. How are the White Castles, Harold?
Smelling like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
I feel really underdressed, but I didn't have time to change after I left work today. There are some recurring themes here. I'm recognizing some words, but this event really has prompted me. It's a time of reflection about our accordion-playing, globe-trotting, political junkie leader. And believe me, there's been a lot to reflect upon. Trips to Homestead, Florida, China, Slovakia, southern Missouri. I can guarantee you it's easier to get Harold to go to Romania than it is to get him to come to the Ozarks. I think it's the language and cultural shock of coming to the Ozarks, where there's a church and a Trump pent sign on every corner. And yes, it's the same corner. But I have known Harold so long that soon after I met him, I was shocked and at some level very uncomfortable when I learned that he attended a church that did not have services on Sunday night. A Baptist church, I mean, how can a Baptist church function without having church services on Sunday night? But that was years ago. Under his tutelage, I now attend my church's service, live streamed over the internet, sitting in my living room in various states of undress. So I'm coming around, Harold. You don't have to be at church all the time. I've also reflected on my first impression of Harold. I remember it very clearly. It was in the fellowship hall at University Heights Baptist Church. I saw Harold, hadn't met him. Had his pullover sweater on, and his hair was kind of tousled, and then I heard he had a Vanderbilt degree. I thought, gosh, this guy's kind of preppy. But I didn't know him too much longer, and I realized that the sweater probably came from a thrift store. His hair was strategically mussed to cover up his receding hairline. He was just a regular guy. Even though my mom did tell me one time, I asked, what do you think about hair? I said, well, he's a little bit uppity. I'll never argue with my mom. But I've also reflected on the many attributes that Harold has, and I would just mention a couple briefly. And these are attributes that have served him well, that have served me well, that have served CBF well. Harold is comfortable and at ease just about anywhere he finds himself, whatever context he finds himself in, whether it's being energized and informed at Macedonia Baptist Church in Kansas City, whether it's doing construction work with his new Roma friends in Slovakia, whether it's extolling the virtues of CBF as a VIP guest at Bethel Chapel on Shawnee Creek in Shannon County, Missouri. He was a VIP guest because, he was from Kansas City. And that's the church, that's the picturesque wood-frame church where John often attends. It's heated by a pot-belly wood stove, and the men and the women sit on different sides of the church. But Harold was welcomed with open arms. And I'm comfortable around Harold. Personally, that's meant a lot to me. He's kind of been a surrogate pastor to me over the years, but he's a guy that Sachko and I can take him out by the pond in Mountain View, and while Sachko and I are enjoying locally produced adult beverage, as Sachko would say, we could chide Harold. Harold, if you don't care about your health, yes, go ahead and drink that one soda we put in the cooler for you. I should have said, along with accordion playing, he's temperate. And Harold is also persistent, but he's persistent without being pushy. He first brought the idea of a sabbatical when I was on the coordinating council for the state, and I'm thinking, okay, sabbatical, that's when you get paid for not going to work. But he brought me around eventually, and I have to recognize the need and the benefit for sabbaticals. Also, he was persistent. The first couple of times he came to Southern Missouri, he tried to partner with a couple of our local agencies down there, and he was, let's just say, he was rebuffed. But he didn't give up. And that persistence eventually birthed the relationship that we're now enjoying between CBF and the Good Samaritan Care Clinic. Harold has been very important in the life of CBF. He's been important in my life. And just because we're roasting him and kind of setting him off to the side, that does not mean I don't continue to look forward to your contributions to and through CBF.
Harold actually met my brother Caleb before he met me. And the first time I introduced myself to Harold, I said, "I'm Tyler, I'm Caleb's brother." And Harold said, "Oh, yeah, he's fatter than you." Which was true at the time. But Harold has always been generous. That's the thing I mostly want to talk about. Harold has always been generous with his time, with his resources. He's been generous with his jokes, although you always call that locker room talk when... But Harold is always generous, especially when it comes to young Baptists. Harold's always generous to young Baptists. One year, my brother and I both wanted to go to a CBF General Assembly in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we could afford plane tickets, but we couldn't afford a hotel room. So Harold said, "Well, why don't you guys come and share my hotel room?" And we thought, gosh, that's so nice. So we flew to North Carolina, and our plane was delayed, and we didn't get to the hotel until about 2 a.m. And we go up to the room, and we knock, and Harold comes to the door, and what he suddenly remembered is that he also offered for David Johnson to share the room with Harold. Now, we did not know David Johnson, and as we got into the hotel room, my brother and I saw that Harold was in one bed, and David Johnson was in the other bed. And I turned to my brother and said, "Well, I'll sleep with Harold." And Caleb, neither of us had met David Johnson, so David was still asleep. Harold forgot to tell David that we were coming. So my brother met David Johnson as he crawled into bed with him. The icing on the cake, friends, is that was the night of my second wedding anniversary. However, that has always meant the world to me. That's always meant the world to me, that Harold was willing to put himself in a place of discomfort and that he was willing to share. Yeah, David Johnson. Yeah, you made that decision for David Johnson and Caleb and me. But Harold has always been willing to put himself in a place of discomfort if it serves to invest in the life of Young Baptist. And I am not doing what I'm doing without you in my life. And I am not a part of CBF without you in my life. And I am not in ministry without you in my life. And I know that I am not alone among young CBF Baptists that feel that way. And so there may be a generation one day that knew not Harold Phillips, but it will be long after I'm gone. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you noticed a trend that these were a little spicy and they got nice at the end. So I've been spicy, so here's my nice. When I called Harold a denominational hack earlier, well, I called him that, and he is. But hack and politician these days are said in less kind ways than I think they should be, because I don't think, and I don't think Harold thinks either, that a politician is a bad thing. Because think about what a politician is. A politician assesses everyone's perspective in the pool, their needs, their wants, and the politician has to go meet them one-on-one and help bring everybody together to a common consensus toward a goal to get things done. To me, that is Harold's greatest gift as the CBF coordinator. Anyone who thinks a politician wasn't needed in this role to get a bunch of free and independent show-me state Baptists on the same page is crazy. And don't ever say, well, we've never done it that way before. Don't say that to Harold. So, Harold, I almost called your mom. I know. You'll owe me later. But I almost called your mom to see what she might add to the roast tonight, and she would have. She would have. But I just didn't think that was going to be fair to her, put her on the spot. But I did think about somebody who really knows Harold better than anybody else in the world, who just happens to be in the room tonight. And so here's the surprise, Harold. A roast for Harold Phillips would not be complete without hearing from Gwen. So here we go.
All my life I've wanted to do this. I have to take off my glasses to be able to read well, so I'll just say. Well, as most of you know, I'm just going to kind of take a little look back. Most of you know, our family moved to Missouri from Louisville because Harold was called to be the minister of education at Second Baptist Church in Liberty. Our daughter Rachel was 3, and even though it was really traumatic for us to leave our home, we quickly grew to love Missouri, and especially Liberty. And we can give all that thanks to Deb Steincross, who's right here, so thank you for that. So it's interesting to think back 20 years or so and relive the conversations that Harold and I had about this new trail that he had been asked to blaze as CBF coordinator. It was something that had never been done in Missouri. It was a brand new group. He would basically be making up things just as he went along. There was no CBF office anywhere in the state. But because Missouri Baptist Convention offices were here in Jeff City, I just wondered if that meant that we were going to need to move here. Well, being the submissive wife that I have been for 39 years, I told Harold that I really believed he was the right person for this job, and I did. And I really didn't care where the offices were, but that Rachel and I were going to stay in Liberty. And so he could make that decision. I'm also really it's fun to think back on the very first place that the CBF office was, and that was in this little tiny bank building in Liberty. Because we were able to stay in Liberty, that was wonderful. And so he rented this little tiny building at the UMB Bank and had a part-time secretary, Doris Thomas, who was wonderful. And I can still remember going in that tiny little room, no bathroom, no windows, no anything, just this little room, and it was always covered in Post-it notes. They were everywhere, and that's how he worked. Do you remember that? Yeah. That's how he worked. They were just everywhere. Any little thought he had, they were all over everywhere. And then the other thing that I remember about that time is that because Doris only worked part-time, Harold was by himself an awful lot. So as soon as he got home, he walked in the door ready to start talking. At the time, I was teaching second graders, and all I really wanted was for him to be quiet. And that just didn't happen. So those are the things I remember about that very beginning. There's been kind of a standing joke in Liberty all these years among our friends about who's going to get called on to take care of Gwen when Harold is out of the country, because he goes out of town a lot. And so we're a really healthy family, and I hardly ever have any kind of medical problem, but it just seems like that whenever he's out of the country, some sort of emergency comes up. And David has been my go-to friend all these years. I usually have to call, and he'll take care of me or whatever. But it has happened so often that even this last time that he went to Romania, his mother was out walking. She's 90 and was out walking in Nashville and got hit by a car. Well, she's doing really well now, but she had a severe hit and all. But the very first thing she said to me when I called her, because I had to call her because Harold was out of the country, you remember. Okay, so I'm calling to make sure she is okay. And she said, "Gwen, I just decided that I would go to the hospital this time and save you that trouble." Probably one of the hardest adjustments that I've had to make to this whole thing is Harold's love of music from Eastern Europe. Thank you, Shane and Diane. The first trip that he took to Romania had him hooked. He fell in love with the accordion. And I have to say, I did not see that coming. He asked for his very own accordion for his birthday, and I gave it to him. And so every year now, he's obsessed with it, honestly. He takes lessons and he plays constantly. But every year since then, when he travels to Romania or to Slovakia or anywhere through Eastern Europe, he is on the lookout for street musicians who are playing. And then I always get the videos on my phone of him playing these videos of this person playing the accordion. A lot of times they know how, a lot of times they do not know how to play. In all honesty, though, I have to say that these past 20 years have been wonderful, honestly. It's such a blessing to live with someone who wakes up every day really happy with what he's doing and loves everything that he's doing. I look forward to even more years of good times with him. I think CBF Heartland is alive and well, and selfishly, I like to think that Harold has a whole lot to do with that. Thank you.
Okay, now the man of the hour gets to come and rebut everything that's been said. But while we're doing that, since we all live in the age of phones and everything, we don't need to make copies. Get out your phone and go to Safari or whatever your thing is and look up "Let Me Call You Sweetheart," okay? Just do that. It'll hold that. We'll use that a little later. But here's the man of the hour, our favorite person to poke fun at, the lifeblood of CBF Heartland, Harold Phillips.
Jeff, are we okay on time? 3 minutes. Not really. Sorry. It's okay. We won't do it next year. Okay. Well, I just want to start out by saying to David and to everybody who had a part in the program that this whole evening has been rigged. It's crooked. They're conspiracy against me, and I do not accept the results. So let's just keep clear there. seriously, I want to thank each person that had a part on this program, especially Gwen, who was a total surprise, and the tacky comments that went along with that. Gary Dollar, thank you, Gary, told me that an event like this is one you do to take it for the team. And so I subjected myself to it, thanks to Gary Dollar, so nice, so nice. In 1991, when CBF started, many of us were sad, we were angry, and or we were hopeful. You look around this room tonight, anybody sad or angry? No. Still filled with hope? Okay. 20 years ago, when I started as coordinator, we had $17,000 in the bank. We discovered we had some unpaid bills that were related to the Tilbury project, and by that summer we had $50 in the bank. $50 in the bank. Takes a pretty clueless person to not be sweating about that, right? Sent out an appeal to pastors, to churches, to individuals, and said, we're going to have to step up to the plate if this thing is going to work. And since that time, we have been a remarkably generous people and good things happening. So a couple of years ago, I was thinking about all this constellation of events coming in 2016. CBF's 25th anniversary, ending 20 years of being here, and oh yeah, we hired Jeff 10 years ago. Susie Painter, Susie, you're still there, okay. Susie and I had talked about this dream of hers of creating this culture of sabbatical throughout churches and among ministers in CBF world. And so there's an opportunity to help with that in a very small way, just a little bit, in a very small way. And so I talked with our coordinating council officers. Let me see if I can remember them. Michael Olmstead was one. If they left. Michael Olmstead, Nancy Thompson from Iowa, Ross Cassman, our moderator now, Jordan Dollar, David Johnson, Charles Cantrell, Robin Sandbothy. And I said, when the time comes that I'm no longer the coordinator, what do we do? And Gary Dollar, thank you, Gary Dollar. Gary Dollar had suggested, you could bring up the idea about transitioning in Jeff as the coordinator, okay? So I brought that up. When the time comes, could we transition Jeff into being the moderator? And the coordinating council said, yes, let's do it now. Wait. So, Jeff, this is your time now, buddy. So the decision was I was going to continue on full time with CBF Heartland. It's just that Jeff would be the coordinator. So then we have these conversations. Well, if Jeff is the coordinator, what am I? Still working full time. What am I? And so Jeff, being the creative type that he is, said, well, Harold, maybe you could become the has-been coordinator. Maybe you could be the used-to-be coordinator. Maybe you could be the washed-up coordinator. And I, in a very humble way, said, perhaps I could be a church benefits advocate, because that's what Susie has asked me to do. That's pretty much what you and I do every day anyway. And so my humble suggestion, you actually accepted it, and for that I'm grateful. Jeff is a great crafter of words. When I write something for him, it's just blah, 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 blah. Jeff thinks that anything he writes is worthy of winning a Pulitzer Prize. Right? Yeah, in a humble sort of way, okay? So together we, translated we put together a press release explaining this transition to becoming a church benefits advocate full-time with CBF Heartland, and also taking on this opportunity with CBF Global to talk with churches beyond this area about sabbatical. That press release was in Word and Way, Baptist News Global, churches got one, pastors got an email, donors got one. And I want to tell you, even just today, forget about since that press release, 6 people have asked me, Harold, how's retirement? My responses have been twofold, with clenched teeth and a forced smile to say, I'm not retired, I'm not retiring, and the other is to say, thank you, Jeff, for nothing. So, you know, the fun thing about this job, and Jeff, I hope it's true for you, I have not worked for a day in the past 20 years. And there's been some joking about that, but the truth is, I really don't think I've worked in the last 20 years a day, because my job title has been, yours now, Jeff, wake up in the morning thinking about Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Is that a joy or is that work? To me, that's joy. And the best part is, I don't have to deal with any jerks, and I still get to be a Baptist. Now, what a deal that is. Now, there are two, Jeff, I'm sorry about the time, and there's a great bluegrass band upstairs. I'm sorry. There are two things that kind of frame my last 10 years, and Gwen knows this. One was the 2008 sabbatical experience that CBF Heartland gave me. By the way, if your church does not have a sabbatical for its pastor, you need to have a sabbatical experience in your personnel policy and in your budget. How'd I do, Susie? Okay, thank you. Yes, okay. But in that 2008 sabbatical, I did a civil rights pilgrimage that was through the South of my growing up days, and reconnecting with that. It was powerful. I got to experience being a neighborhood team leader in a political campaign, and to experience all of that and what could translate from that very secular kind of thing into CBF and the way we're networked around and all. The other thing was to create an experience of being a stranger in a strange land, and I did that, and it was phenomenal. I went to Bucharest, Romania. You saw Dennis, who's become a very, very dear friend to me. I've fallen in love with Romania, with Eastern Europe, and out of that sabbatical came the Roma Road Project with Shane and Diane McNary. And we've had groups that have gone to the Ruth School, the Naomi Center, Gypsy Smith School, Gypsy Smith Mobile. They've been in Slovakia working in Sino Banja. They've worked with Vajets, the Samuel Project. Absolutely phenomenal. All the outgrowth of an incredible sabbatical experience in 2008. Love Romania, love Eastern Europe. The other, wait. By the way, those White Castles stink.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. Let's eat White Castles and go for a car ride. Yeah. How do I look, Gwen?
Embarrassing, but it's okay.
Okay. The other great experience of my life in the last 10 years is I didn't learn to play a banjo. God, is that a classy instrument or what? Classy instrument. I didn't learn to play a horrid bagpipe. I've told Gwen, if she doesn't love me, get a bagpipe player at the funeral. That's her signal to everybody there. She never loved me. But the third part of that holy trinity of instruments, not banjo, not bagpipe, it's a accordion. So because I have fallen in love with accordion, I would like to present a gift to you because you are friends. Okay? And, huh? Okay. Okay. And I'm going to ask my very dear former friend, David Falk, to come up. You know, the only thing better than a street musician, and I'm serious, if you see somebody playing a musical instrument on the street, give them a tip. That is pretty gutsy to do that, right? Okay. Even better than a street musician is people singing.
Right.
Community, group singing, it's wonderful.
Let me call you sweetheart.
Let me call you sweetheart. And David's going to lead you because when I fall apart on this thing,
Are you playing it through first? Turn toward them. They're recording you. All right. There's a little bit back toward the rug. Okay, let's all stand and sing to Harold. What?
Would any tips be appropriate for the offering for global missions, Stephen Porter?
Okay.
Wait, I gotta get the funds here.
You ready?
I'm ready, I hope so.
Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes so let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you.
Only $1, that's
All right. This is my vow to you. I will never do that. It's been my great honor to serve alongside Harold for over 10 years. He's been an encourager and a friend to me, a teacher more than a supervisor, and I've never met anyone better at connecting with people and connecting them to the fellowship than Harold. Making great friends and building relationships is his forte, and probably the only person better at that is Gwen. Even though Harold has stepped back from the role of coordinator, I can assure you that he still has a passion and a life wish for CBF Heartland that is very deep. And that's why I feel so blessed to make a special announcement tonight that the CBF Heartland Endowment Board has established a special endowment fund to recognize Gwen and Harold's work and influence among us, the Gwen and Harold Phillips Fund. The proceeds from that fund are going to help sustain CBF Heartland in its work of inspiring leaders, transforming missions, and engaging communities. Over the next 3 years, we'll be raising $100,000 for this fund, and as of this moment, we have more than 50% of that raised. I want to invite you to join in that campaign sometime in the next 3 years. There's a little bit of information on your table, and I would encourage you to take that. If you are interested in me contacting you about this fund, you can email me, you can call me, or you can fill out that little form and separate it and put it in the colorful Haitian basket that's somewhere in this room. Gwen and Harold, it's been a real pleasure to know you through the years, to respond to your leadership, and I look forward to just continuing to serve with you during this time. Yeah, thank you so much. It's actually past time for us to move on to the sanctuary. So if you're not familiar with First Baptist Church, Jeff City, it's going to be hard to help you. But there's steps and an elevator that way that will get you to the narthex. And I think there's also steps both directions that will also get you there. But if you aren't familiar with the building, I'm going to recommend going that way. That'll get you where you need to go. Thanks so much tonight.